Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Boy, do we live in a technocracy. Oh my goodness. Our world has become so technical. We have many, many wonderful technical tools, and technology is a kind of a blessing and a curse. It's how we use it. What does it mean? And of course now all the talk about artificial intelligence. So the point is, the world has become very, very technical. It is the language of people. We call children digital natives. And here we are of a certain age, if we've been an adult for some time, this degree of technology is quite new. And we may be confused or intimidated by how quickly technology changes and how we are in a situation of always having to update ourselves. And for that reason, I am very, very happy to introduce you to Sheila Cox, who is a technology strategist, and her book is called The Technology Takers. So, leading change in the digital world, in a digital era. And welcome, Sheila Cox.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Duffy. I'm very excited to be on your radio show, and it's good to talk to you.
Oh, good. And so the biggest question, we don't want to be replaced by technology. We don't want to lose out from other people who are more technically savvy. And many, many people have technophobia. And how do you do that? How do you stay optimistic? And you call our digital age pessimistic?
I think it can be, because as you mentioned, a lot of people, they think of artificial intelligence, and most people don't think of it in a positive light. We've seen so many sci-fi movies where robots are pictured as being evil. You think of the Terminators. The only times robots have been pictured as benign is when they're pictured as sex objects, like in the Stepford Wives. So there's this underlying negative attitude toward artificial intelligence.
Wow, that's a good point. Very good point, Sheila. So, tell us more about the pessimistic digital age. You're saying that people are leery of advanced technology?
Well, they are, because what I've seen, Dr. Duffy, I've written software, I've managed projects, I've worked with a lot of companies, very small companies, very large publicly traded companies, and a lot of times they're looking to become more competitive by making better use of technology. And so the executives are talking about, we've got this really cool technology, and then meanwhile the employees are thinking, how does this affect me? Do I really have a place in this? And I know you're an expert in managing emotions during change, but most executives aren't. And when they talk technology, they don't realize that they're bringing up all of these issues. And so what happens is, for individuals, they think, is there too much technology? Can I keep up with the technology? Is it taking over? And
so you're saying, Sheila, that when companies want to do the next technical program, the next technical incarnation, that they don't take into account the resistance to change of their employees?
Absolutely not. And, well, I'm being a little overstating that. I think they care about that, but what happens is that because they're spending so much time and energy on the technology, they tend to postpone thinking about the impact on the people. So as an example, I work with a lot of chief information officers, the people who are implementing the technology, and they say to me, Sheila, I know that stuff's important. I just don't have the time to focus on it because I'm busy making the technology work. Well, whose job is it then?
Wow.
And the more you postpone that, the more pessimistic people get because they start building this whole story. And there are some people who have been negatively impacted. I grew up in Chicago, and a taxi driver in Chicago used to be able to retire by selling their taxi medallion. They'd get $250,000 for it. Well, today, with all those Lyft drivers and Uber drivers, that money has evaporated. You can't sell a taxi medallion for that kind of money anymore. So they've been negatively impacted by that, and through no fault of their own.
Surely.
But that's what happens is that as these things are moving forward, if you're not anticipating what's going to happen, there can be a negative impact.
Right, if you can't read the future and prepare for it. Right. I never thought about that, but that's very, very true. Yeah, the taxi driver's problems. Mm-hmm. I mean, I knew about that part, but the selling of the cab, yes.
So it happens at a corporate level, people like Blockbuster, and it happens at an individual level. If the individual hasn't really kept up, I will tell you, one of my doctors, who I absolutely adore, has said to me that he's going to retire because he doesn't want to have to learn about computers. Well, that's really sad because somebody who's been through medical school and all of that training, they can learn computers. It's not beyond his capability.
But the story that this individual, for example, is telling himself is that he can't or he doesn't want to because it's too difficult to learn computers.
Well, and oftentimes, Dr. Ducky, it isn't that it's too difficult. It's that he's an expert now, and he doesn't want to become a beginner at something else.
Right. That's it. Sheila Cox, that is it. Because, the learning curve when someone who is a peak performer, a master at what they do, and now something new, and they get catapulted back into apprentice status, and there's a lot of ego involved, would you say?
Absolutely. Because either because I'm the best physician in this hospital, or I could, maybe I'm not even in a managerial position. I'm accounts receivable clerk, but I'm the one everybody goes to with their tough questions because I know how this works. And you're asking me to give away my expertise and my status and my power and now become like everybody else. And I don't want that. It's the personal identity, and as you said, being an expert. And so again, this is some where that emotional resistance comes from, and most people they don't even understand that it's going on, much less be able to voice it. And then you've got executives and technologists just pushing. I'll tell you, years ago, I used to work as a swim instructor. And I'll tell you, the worst swim instructors were the ones who their parents had thrown them in the water and they just started to swim. They were naturals. Right? So when they're faced with somebody like me who's not a natural, and I say, well, how do I swim? And they just say, well, swim.
Just swim. Right. Just move your arms and legs. Yeah.
Do it, right? And of course, if I try it and now I gulp down water, now I'm even more scared. And so what I've learned is stay out of the pool, stay out of the water.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, a lot of people who are in technology training roles are those same experts who it comes naturally to them.
Comes naturally.
And it always makes me sad when I see somebody and they say, oh, I just don't know how to do this on my cell phone. And then somebody else, well-meaning, grabs the cell phone from them and just hits a few buttons and goes, hey, there.
Right.
This doesn't help. It just makes them feel worse.
Right. Now they're enabled, and they are become dependent upon someone else doing it for them.
Right. So it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm so passionate about this. I really want to help people adopt new technologies in the workplace. And you put your finger on it. You don't want to go back to being an apprentice.
Yeah.
So one of the ways out of that is to continually learn small things when you don't really need them, when you're not under the gun.
Oh.
But many people in the workplace, they wait for their boss to send them to a class, right?
Right.
And that's a little late. I'll tell you a personal story, and I'm someone who should know better. Mm-hmm. But I use a desktop computer, and people, they either use a Macintosh type computer or they use an IBM style Microsoft computer. And I was using one that had Windows on it. So Windows was upgraded, and I thought, how difficult can it be, right? I didn't set aside the time to learn it. And of course, when did I try to learn it? 2 a.m. the night before I had a big presentation.
Yep.
And
that's familiar to many of us, absolutely. Yes.
I literally was pounding my head against the wall and crying.
Right.
But I know better, and so you can't wait for your boss to send you to a class. You have to just be learning this along the way.
Be proactive. Proactive. Be continuous. We have information on leaders and top talent, and one of the qualities they have is their constant eagerness to learn and their commitment to being lifelong learners and being open to learning new things. And you know, Sheila, that the brain loves novelty. That is how we grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, so this applies not just to what you consider your field to be, whether it's accounting or whether it's surgery. It also applies to technology. And if you continue to learn, it's easier to learn.
Yes.
It's a little bit like...
Go ahead. Well, I want to share a personal story as well, which is when I was first learning some particular technical things from my own assistant, Pam Kimler, my own assistant, and I actually felt my blood rush. I felt tightening up.
Yeah.
I felt mortified and embarrassed that my employee was in a position to teach me. I was the student of her. And I will tell you, Sheila, that she was so wonderful. She just taught me so slowly, without an attitude, very humble herself, and just going over the stages with me. And if I didn't understand and I asked a question, she explained herself very patiently. And now I ask her about any number of things because she's a technical wizard. And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I can be that learner. But the idea of the precepts that we have, right? To think, I should know this, or I shouldn't have to ask about this to someone who is below me on the hierarchy. There's a lot of ego involved, and all of the shoulds. So,
well, and you know that once you start saying should, you're already having a problem.
Absolutely. When you hear yourself saying should, right, shoulding on yourself or shoulding on someone else, it's already bad, quite bad.
But good for you, because first of all, you've got the awareness to see the emotions that are coming up. And a lot of people aren't as aware. And so what happens is that they just get frustrated and angry.
Right.
And the way I'll hear it, it's so sad. They say, well, I don't want technology 101. I'm an executive. I need technology 201. Well, and my response is, well, if you have that attitude, we need to start with 001.
Right, exactly.
Past that.
And you know what they say in Zen Buddhism, allow yourself a beginner's mind.
Exactly.
And it's a wonderful thing to have a beginner's mind.
So you are blessed because you do have somebody who's patient and is willing to show you how to do things and do it on a one-on-one basis.
Yes.
A lot of people don't have that.
That's so true.
And again, you can't always count on your boss to provide it. So it's the challenge to find a place where you're not going to feel exposed.
Right.
Where you can ask what you think are dumb questions. So, as an example, for many years I ran peer advisory boards with CEOs, and you've done executive coaching, so you know how it works in a coaching relationship. People have to trust, and they have to know that you're not going to reveal what's discussed. And that was the most important thing in these peer advisory boards, that a CEO could come to the table and ask a question they couldn't ask one of their subordinates.
Right.
But they could ask another CEO who was sworn to secrecy.
There you go.
And so for executives, I always recommend find an environment like that and then bring in a technology expert and have them explain things to you where you can ask those questions.
So true.
Where you can ask the questions you're not willing to ask in front of your staff.
Right.
But the longer you postpone asking those questions, the more difficult it gets. Because you're having a larger and larger body of things that you don't know.
So this is be proactive. You know, this is Steve Covey's #1 habit in his book, Seven Habits of Highly Successful People. And so be proactive, anticipate. We call it anticipatory socialization. I stay ahead of the curve. And there's something I think that's so important, which is in our speedaholic society, it is, oh my goodness, this is going to take time, right? Very good point. Very good point. Because, first of all, just like my bad example of beating my head against a wall in the middle of the night, if you wait until you need it, you're under pressure and it's really hard. Right.
And then the other thing is you're not going to move from apprentice to expert overnight. This is going to take time. So you need to give yourself the time. You need to have some kind of a support structure. You have someone in your own office, but many people don't. They don't have a support structure. And it's not somebody just to give you the answer, because then it's like that whole, teach me a fish.
That's
you don't want to give you the fish. You want to have them help you through it. And
so you fish yourself for the rest of your life. Yes.
Right. So that can be people in your office, or it can be peers. It can be in another environment. But to have some people on speed dial who are patient, who will help you out. And then there's an attitude element here. It's so sad to me. Ever so often people will say to me, my smartphone's smarter than I am. And that's totally untrue. So, I've got one of those electronic thermostats, and it's got a little computer in it. But if it doesn't work, I never say, "Oh, it's smarter than I am." I say, "This stupid thermostat." But for some reason, people get into this mode as though they think their smartphone or their device is smart, and it's not. No,
good point.
It may have encyclopedic knowledge, and it may be able to bring that to you very quickly. It may have very quick lookup time, but it doesn't have any kind of nuance. It doesn't have any kind of tuition. It doesn't have any kind of context. It doesn't know what's appropriate given the situation. There's so much more that any human being brings to the table that's much more intelligent than the biggest, baddest computer that you can find. So
these are tools, right, Sheila Cox? Right. These are tools for us. Yes.
And so you have to recognize that, in a way, computers are kind of stupid. Because if you don't say to it exactly what it expects to hear, whether it's numbers or words, in exactly the order it expects to get it, you're not going to get the result you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just very stubborn.
Right. Right.
And so it's not because it's smart. It's got a one-track mind. And everybody's had that situation where you've asked somebody like Google or Siri, and they say, "Well, I can't answer that."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hello.
And I'm sure we've all had the experience of our GPS taking us somewhere else,
Right.
and not giving us the right directions. Yeah.
And it will do the wrong thing very consistently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember one family who somehow Google had it in its little mind that their home was the county courthouse. So you can imagine how much traffic they got.
Wow.
With people turning around in their driveway. Now, they complained and they got it fixed, but that's the thing. Whereas with a human being, you make that mistake once and you learn pretty quickly, whereas Google did it over and over and over and over
Isn't
again.
that something? You see?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. It's because we are not rote. We do think and we can learn. If
Right.
we don't tell ourselves the story that we cannot learn, or we are not willing to devote the time, because human beings tend to be much more geared toward instant gratification.
Very true.
Individuals and companies, corporations are geared toward instant gratification and not the long-term view, and that really has to be switched up. Would you agree?
No, I agree, and I think that that's a very good point, because what happens is that sometimes, and I call this magical thinking, Dr. Duffy, that they think that magically I'm going to bring in this new technology and people will be transformed, and it doesn't happen that way. Because if people are not aware of it and they don't understand it and they haven't bought into it, it's not going to work. But because many business executives feel like human emotions are just too messy.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's just too messy, so they don't want to deal with it. And I mean, you've probably coached people who they're afraid someone will cry in the workplace.
Oh, absolutely. I call it feelings phobia. That we live in a feeling phobic society. And as you say, feelings are messy. No, go ahead, Sheila. Yeah.
So the last thing I want to do is find out how people feel about this.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's on the table, then it's out in the open, and now we have to somehow deal with it.
Even asking the question is so liberating. How do you feel about having to learn this new technical system?
Right.
Well, I don't like it. It's a pain. I don't like it as well as the other one. It takes me too long. And not to shame people for having resistance to change, and to say, I completely get it. Of course, you have to learn it anyway, but I completely get it. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing is to do exactly what you did, which I really give you credit for, which is you shared a story of where it was difficult for you to learn.
Right. Right.
And so you're not trying to come across as some superhuman,
right.
And pretending that this isn't going to be a challenge for you, too. Because it is.
It is.
It is.
It is.
And it's interesting because you talked earlier about digital natives, and sometimes people assume that if you're a digital native, then you can learn any technology. And that's not actually true, because there are plenty of people, they're wonderful on things like Instagram, but you put them in front of an Excel spreadsheet, and they have the same reaction that I would.
That's a good distinction. Just because you know some areas of technology doesn't mean that you necessarily are a whiz in everything.
Correct. So they're going to go through the same emotions of, wow, I'm an expert on these things, but I don't know anything about how to use Excel. And in some ways, the stress and the expectation is actually higher because this is somebody who knows how to use a keyboard and has used a computer for many years. So it's still a requirement to be able to, as you said, have that willingness to learn. And I'm trying to remember, was it Patrick Lencioni who wrote the book Get Naked?
I'm not sure.
But he wrote several books on leadership, the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things he talks about is vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you truly want to be a leader, you can't wear a mask and say that you're invulnerable. You have to really show your vulnerability.
So true.
And this is one of those important areas. So a lot of times I find that the executives are afraid to be in a class with other people.
Right.
Because they don't want to show that they don't already know all of this stuff.
Right.
So they want to have behind the scenes mentors helping them.
Right. And don't you think, Sheila Cox, that we've been taught, so many of us, that we're not supposed to ever say I don't know, that we're literally disallowed from saying I don't know, and I think it's more males than females.
Well, there is an element around a more masculine leadership style, which is that I lead based on my expertise, based on my knowledge.
Right.
And my belief is that true leaders lead based on leveraging the knowledge and capability of their subordinates.
Beautiful. And on that note, Sheila Cox, we must close. This show has absolutely flown by. But
it's been such fun talking to you.
Same here, Sheila. And I just want to underscore that point because it is so important. Rather than sole expertise, that a real leader leverages the knowledge of themselves as well as others and really creates a synergistic atmosphere with the knowledge. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sheila Cox, the author of The Technology Takers, Leading Change in the Digital Era. And wonderful, wonderful book. Please find it on Amazon or any of the other on-site websites, and of course in bookstores. Sheila Cox, COX. Thank you again, Sheila. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.